A tariff is, at its core, a tax on imported goods, but it's much more than just a line item on a customs form. Tariffs have shaped the course of global trade for centuries, influencing what we buy, how much we pay, and even the relationships between nations. Governments use tariffs to protect domestic industries by making foreign products more expensive, encouraging people to buy local. This can help small businesses and farmers compete against cheaper imports, supporting jobs and local economies. Tariffs can also be used as leverage in international negotiations, pressuring other countries to change their behavior. They're a bargaining chip, a way to signal seriousness or dissatisfaction in trade talks. Sometimes just the threat of tariffs is enough to bring countries to the negotiating table. The mere possibility can shift the balance of power and force a compromise. While tariffs can generate revenue for governments, their main impact today is strategic, not financial. In the modern era, tariffs are less about filling the treasury and more about shaping economic policy and international relations. But tariffs are a double-edged sword. They often lead to higher prices for consumers and can slow the economy. Everyday shoppers may find themselves paying more for basic goods, from groceries to electronics. Retaliation is a real risk. When one country imposes tariffs, the other often responds in kind. This back and forth can quickly spiral, affecting industries far beyond the original dispute. This tit-for-tat can quickly escalate into a trade war, disrupting global supply chains and harming both economies. Jobs can be lost, businesses can close, and uncertainty can ripple through markets worldwide. Economists warn that tariffs are a blunt instrument with unintended consequences that can outweigh their benefits. The effects can be unpredictable, sometimes hurting the very people they're meant to protect. The decision to impose tariffs is never simple, and the stakes are high. Policymakers must weigh short-term gains against long-term risks, considering both economic and political fallout. Used carelessly, tariffs can do more harm than good. In the end, they are a powerful tool, one that must be wielded with caution, foresight, and a clear understanding of the global consequences. In 2025, the US-China trade relationship exploded in a way few could have predicted. Years of simmering tensions finally boiled over, and the world watched as two economic giants collided head-on. What began as a series of heated negotiations quickly escalated into a full-blown tariff war, with both sides refusing to back down. The Trump administration, determined to protect American industries and jobs, rapidly increased tariffs on a wide range of Chinese goods, hoping to force Beijing's hand. By April, tariffs on Chinese imports soared to an unprecedented 145%, sending shockwaves through global markets and rattling investors from New York to Shanghai. China hit back fast and hard, targeting key U.S. exports with tariffs up to 125%. The message was clear: China would not be bullied. The Chinese strategy was precise: strike at the heart of American agriculture, especially soybeans and pork, industries that depended heavily on Chinese buyers for their survival. American farmers who had long relied on China as their biggest customer were suddenly cut off from their most important market, leaving crops unsold and futures uncertain. The U.S. administration believed America had the upper hand, but China's targeted retaliation created intense political pressure at home, especially in rural states. The result: extreme volatility, deep uncertainty, and a near halt in U.S.-China trade. Supply chains were thrown into chaos, and global commerce slowed to a crawl. Businesses on both sides of the Pacific struggled to plan for the future as costs and rules changed overnight, leaving many on the brink of closure. The U.S.-China Business Council warned that nearly all traded goods were now affected, threatening millions of jobs and putting entire industries at risk. The trade war's chaos was felt most acutely in America's heartland, where communities depended on exports to survive and families faced mounting uncertainty. For many, the future had never looked so uncertain. Hopes for a quick resolution faded as the standoff dragged on, and anxiety grew with each passing day. The tariff shockwave left both economies reeling, with lasting consequences that would shape the global landscape for years to come. For American farmers, China's tariffs were devastating. The impact was felt almost overnight, as years of hard work and planning were suddenly thrown into uncertainty. Soybeans, once America's top agricultural export to China, suddenly had no buyers. Shipments that once left for Chinese ports now sat idle, and contracts evaporated. Brazil quickly filled the gap, capturing the market American farmers lost. Brazilian producers ramped up exports and their soybeans flowed into China, deepening the blow to U.S. growers. U.S. agricultural exports to China dropped 39% in a single year. Ports that once bustled with activity grew quiet, and grain elevators stood half-empty. Soybean prices collapsed, leaving farmers with unsold crops and mounting losses. Many watched their harvests rot in the fields or pile up in storage with no end in sight. The pork industry faced the same fate. China, the world's largest pork consumer, turned to other suppliers. American pork producers lost access to a crucial market almost overnight. A glut of pork and soybeans in the U.S. drove prices even lower, threatening the survival of family farms. With too much supply and too few buyers, the financial strain intensified. The ripple effect hit rural economies hard, from equipment dealers to local banks. Businesses that depended on farmers saw sales plummet, and small towns felt the squeeze. China's strategy was clear: target the economic core of rural America. By hitting these communities, the tariffs sent shockwaves through the heartland. Farmers faced rising costs for inputs and falling prices for their products. A perfect storm. Many struggled to pay bills, invest in equipment, or even plan for the next season. Many wondered if their farms could survive the trade war. The uncertainty weighed heavily on families who had worked the land for generations. The pain was immediate, widespread, and deeply personal. For countless farmers, the trade war wasn't just about economics, it was about the future of their way of life. Behind the numbers are real families facing crisis. In Iowa, Illinois, and Nebraska, generations of farmers watched their business models collapse overnight. One fifth-generation soybean farmer in Iowa faced selling his crop at a loss or paying to store it, with no end in sight. The financial strain forced tough conversations about the future of family farms. At local markets, optimism gave way to anxiety and talk of survival. The pain spread beyond farms. Equipment dealers, diners, and small-town businesses all felt the impact. Federal aid became a lifeline, but farmers wanted trade, not aid. Government payments were a temporary fix, not a solution. The bureaucracy and uncertainty of aid programs added to the stress. For proud, independent farmers, relying on government checks was a bitter pill. The sense of betrayal and loss ran deep. The heartland's resilience was being tested like never before. With China's market closed, American farmers scrambled to find new buyers. Mexico became the top destination for U.S. farm products, offering a lifeline, but not a full replacement. China's demand, especially for soybeans, was unmatched. No single country could fill the void. As U.S. exports to China plummeted, Brazil and Australia signed long-term deals, cementing their place as China's new suppliers. Lost markets are hard to win back, even if tariffs are lifted. U.S. farmers now focus on diversifying exports, seeking new opportunities in Southeast Asia and the Middle East. Building new markets takes time and investment, and the process is slow. The agricultural sector remains exposed and vulnerable. The search for new customers is a marathon, not a sprint. The abrupt loss of China left deep scars on American agriculture. Recovery would be long and uncertain. As farm incomes collapsed, the U.S. government stepped in with emergency aid. The USDA provided direct payments to farmers hit hardest by tariffs, especially those growing soybeans, pork, corn, and dairy. These payments kept many afloat, but they were a fragile lifeline. Aid propped up farm income, but it couldn't replace lost markets or restore independence. Many farmers worried about becoming dependent on subsidies, knowing aid was temporary. The payments didn't cover everyone's losses, especially those with recent investments. Farmers wanted trade, not aid, a real solution, not a patch. The cycle of tariffs and bailouts was unsustainable. The greatest challenge for farmers was uncertainty. The trade war made planning impossible: what to plant, when to sell, whether to invest. A temporary truce in August 2025 brought hope for a solution, but fears lingered. Even if tariffs ended, lost trust and new competitors made recovery daunting. Many worried that aggressive tariffs were the new normal. Farmers longed for stability and predictable trade agreements. The emotional toll was immense, testing the resilience of rural communities. As the truce's deadline approached, livelihoods hung in the balance. The 2022 notes is down, and not the during by. The 2025 trade war pushed American agriculture to a crossroads. Plummeting incomes and lost markets forced a painful reevaluation of trade strategy. Government aid masked deep structural damage, but couldn't fix it. Diversifying export markets became essential, but no single country could replace China. The path to recovery depends on resolving the trade conflict and restoring stable market access. Farmers remain confident in their products, but know the road ahead is tough. The temporary truce is a start, but lasting peace and fair trade are needed. The lessons of 2025 are clear. Stability and open markets are vital for rural America. The future of countless family farms depends on what happens next.